everyone. My name is Dr. Sobel Bunis, and I am the founder of the Emotional Clearinghouse. And it is with great pleasure that I welcome you all here today for a conversation with myself and with my dear friend, Beth McDonald, on astrology as a healing guide. Were you going to say something, Beth? Just wait.
Just hello and welcome. I'm Beth McDonald. I'm an intuitive and an astrologer, and a business consultant. I specialize in business and legal and political things. And I work a lot with peak performers, and that's what built the bridge between Sobel and I.
That's right.
You know, people who are ambitious or in a lot of pain, or both. Like, they don't have to mess around. They don't have the time to mess around, and they want to get down and dirty with it. They want to clear the blocks to whatever their strategy, their goal is. And so working together with Sobel, we've been able to help people fast track a lot of their projects, their life goals and whatnot. And then Sobel got the brilliant idea that we should talk about this. So here we are talking.
Here we are talking about this, and we do love to talk. So
this
is the second episode of a program we're doing called Astrology as a Healing Guide. Now, last month we had a deep dive into Taurus, and of course this month it's all about Gemini. So if you are a Gemini, of course, you're going to find a lot of information that we're going to share that's going to be very helpful for you. But like myself, I have a lot of friends in my life who are Geminis, including Beth. And so having a Gemini in your life, this information that we're going to share today will help you understand them more deeply and help your relationships be more deep and rich and wonderful. And then, of course, Beth has taught me that all of us have all of the signs present in our chart to some degree. So I can almost guarantee that even though this is about Gemini, you're going to find something powerful to relate to here for yourself, whether you think it's in your chart or not. Now, I'm going to give you a tiny bit of background about myself, and then my very brilliant friend, Beth McDonald, who's just a wonderful friend and collaborator and consultant. We are going to let her dive into Gemini, and then the two of us are going to go back and forth talking about how do we use, healing tools like what I specialize in, which is emotional healing. How do we use tools like emotional healing and all the other advice we give to help Gemini or any sign find their health and well-being and balance. So I've had 35 years of experience as a holistic chiropractor, and I was very fortunate that right out of school, I was trained in using what are called emotional healing or emotional clearing techniques. Now, it turned out that people's emotional pain and emotional stress really turned out to be at the root of most of their issues, whether those issues were physical, health issues, or emotional issues. And so over the years, I've gotten more and more deeply into emotional clearing because stress and emotional pain, especially where it's stored in our bodies, is at the root of so much of our illness. And so Beth and I, as she already mentioned, we have been collaborating really well over the years. Her work with astrology, with consulting, and her psychic abilities has given my clients an insight into themselves that we then can take and use to guide our emotional clearing, and vice versa. I've been doing emotional clearing work that then gets handed over to Beth, and it facilitates the work she's doing with clients. So it's a wonderful, wonderful collaboration. And today it's all about Gemini, and I'm so happy to hand it over to you, Beth, to take that dive with everyone. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I also want to just say one little flashback kind of a thing to our last episode, which was about Taurus. It was very, very timely because one of the things I didn't know when we did that was there's this rolling stellium of 3 planets, which are marching closer and closer together through the sign of Taurus and becoming more and more intense. And I have had this explosion of phone calls since our last episode from Taurians or people with a Taurus rising or a Taurus moon or whose husband's a double Taurus or whatever. And it's just kind of like, oh my gosh, this is hard. Why is it so hard right now? I'm like, I probably should have mentioned that last time, and I'm sorry, but I know now. And so, there's a lot of emphasis in Taurus right now, even though the sun is in Gemini right now.
Okay.
And so as Taurus is relational, but your relationship success often depends on a lot of the Gemini issues. Are you grounded? Are you reliable? Can you communicate appropriately in real time? You know, Geminis struggle with this. I know it. I am one. Yeah. And yes. And so for those of you who may be in the midst of a bit of a kerfuffle somewhere, or at least some discomfort, know that at least a piece of it is going to be about harnessing, improving your Gemini skills so that you can use them in your most important relationships, your personal relationships, your love relationships, and then also some of the other ones that Gemini rules that I may just jump into right now because we're here.
Jump in, Beth. Jump in. We're ready.
We're ready. I can cover the historical part at any juncture. Okay, every sign rules different aspects of life. And one of the aspects of life that Gemini rules, because it is the twin, is twins. But even if you don't have a twin or no longer have a twin, if it was a vanishing twin, you've got which we're going to come back to, because that's like Gemini. The relationships that Gemini rule are very narrow, but they're very deep. And it's siblings, especially twins, and in-laws, and aunts and uncles and cousins, but then also, because Gemini rules neighborhoods, your neighbors. And so interestingly, a lot of the issues people are calling with right now, you know, so much of the time it's like parent issues, you know, and right now it's a lot of sibling issues. Granted, they might be trying to deal with mom and dad. You know, is it time, you know, mama just got a dementia diagnosis. How are we going to handle this? You know, that kind of stuff. But Gemini rules a certain niche of family and community relationships. And so if you are a Gemini, you will have a very important focus there. And if it's not easy, if it's not going well, this is where working with Sobel and I can create greater ease. In fact, the first one we ever did 6 months ago, the first podcast we ever did was family relationships, you know, and so it's important to understand the blocks you have, what your part in it is, so that you can unhook it. We can't always control the actions of others, but we can control to greater and greater degrees as we heal how we are showing up.
Exactly.
And as you dive deep into that, a lot of times for Geminis, well, for people, but especially with those with strong Gemini, and especially if we've seen this a couple of times with double Geminis, people who's like sun and rising or sun and moon. It seems to be more of a place where this happens, but it's the concept of a hidden twin or a vanishing twin. And so at this point, I'm going to toss it back to Sobel and let her talk about how this manifests in people's emotional experiences and then what she does for it.
Okay, great. And I realized in my introduction, I forgot to give like a very quick down and dirty scenario about what emotional clearing is. So
go for it.
Very simply, I'm going to see how quickly I can do this, have people understand it. Our bodies hold onto and store memories of things that happened to us in the past that felt traumatic or threatening on some level. And those stored pains and emotional traumas sit there, and they sit there like little emotional buttons. And then in our day-to-day lives, things happen, or we run into people, or things happen that remind us on some level, on some deep unconscious level, of those stored emotional traumas and that stored emotional pain. And what happens is it pushes the button, wakes up those painful emotions, and brings those feelings screaming into your present. And what ends up happening is this is all happening unconsciously. So suddenly out of the blue, you're upset and you don't know why. Suddenly out of the blue, you're in a fight with someone and you don't know why. Or you woke up in the morning and you were making really great progress on your project. And now all of a sudden, boom, you hit a wall and you crash and burn. And then you say, oh, I sabotaged myself. So all of these things can happen as a result of stored emotional trauma. And we now also understand that almost all physical ailments have stress and emotional pain at their roots. So is it important for us to, number one, recognize that we're holding stored emotional trauma and do something to clear it for our health and well-being? Absolutely. And where Beth and I may have started 30, 35 years ago with this work, the scientists hadn't demonstrated and proved yet what we're doing. But now there are so many books out there, so much research out there to prove that, in fact, this is all very real. It's very well documented. It's not just an idea that a bunch of old hippie doctors had. It really is real.
Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about what we call the vanished twin. So we're here today to talk about Gemini, and Gemini represents twins, but it represents one twin that was lost, right? That's the story.
That's the myth. Yeah.
It is that there were twin brothers and one was lost.
Yeah.
And the remaining twin suffered from that disconnect, that powerful loss of the twin and the twin soul. Now, in our world, it turns out that a certain number of pregnancies, like somewhere between 10 and 15% of all pregnancies, actually begin as twins, even in families where there are no twins born. Like a lot of people say, oh, but there are no twins in my family. Yes, no twins born. However, what happens is very early on in these pregnancies, sometimes as early as 1 month into the pregnancy, one of the twins dies. And that tissue is either expelled from the mother's body, or it's absorbed back into the mother's body, or in rare circumstances, the twin tissue is absorbed into the surviving twin's body. And then down the road, this surviving twin may have a serious health issue. They go and they have some kind of an x-ray and they find out they have an extra kidney or an extra ovary or a pair of a cyst that has teeth in it that turns out to be twin tissue. So that's more rare. But what we figured out in the world of chiropractic emotional clearing work many years ago is that a lot of people are holding emotional trauma from having lost a twin when they were in utero. And it's huge. It means that when you were in utero, you had a twin soul there with you. And for whatever your religious or spiritual beliefs are, most people would recognize that there must be some powerful reason for those twin souls to be present together, and some other powerful, and maybe something we'll never be able to understand, some other powerful reason why one of them dies and leaves. But the surviving twin is now born having experienced this profound loss. And what I have seen over the years and what Beth has seen over the years are some pretty classic patterns. One is what looks like real survivor skill, like somebody who went to war, right? And lost all their men in a fight.
Yeah.
They are the one that survived, and for the rest of their lives, they're living with that guilt. The other thing we see, which is classic for Gemini, I've discovered through Beth, is that feeling of isolation. So even though you might be surrounded with people who love you, and like you might be in a crowded room and feel all alone because of having lost the twin. There's this chronic feeling of being alone. And the other classic one I see, a couple of other classic ones, is sometimes the surviving twin is a true workaholic driven human being, because what they're carrying is this belief that I have to come into this life and perform for two. I have to be good enough to, number one, justify my having survived. And I have to be here and fulfill on everything that we would have fulfilled on together. Some of those people have an unexplained grief that doesn't make any sense in terms of their real day-to-day life, but they're carrying this deep grief.
Yeah.
And the other one that's classic and that we're going to get into even more later is what I call people who are oversensitive, who have no ability to have healthy boundaries around other people or around other emotions. And this could be because in utero, they experienced the death of their twin right there, up close and personal. So any healthy boundary they might have been born with is shattered even before birth. And that can lead to being incredibly sensitive to what's going on around you, and the inability to say, in terms of boundaries, this is me, that's you. I can say what's okay for me and what's not okay, and say no. So all of those things are kind of classic vanished twin symptoms. And we now are jumping back into Gemini, who is carrying a lost twin energy regardless. Right?
Absolutely. And for this little section of it, I want to go back to the some of the historical bits, because astrology, there's so many different kinds of it, right? And I practice the Western psychological astrology because it was pioneered through the ages by healers for healers, specifically to help people heal. Yes, you can use it to project when is going to be the best day to give birth, when is going to be the best day to get married or launch a new business or product or whatever. You can certainly use it for that. But a primary focus of the people who have carried this ball philosophically down the field, especially in the last 100 years, has been people in the psychological community who were also ministers or priests or astrologers, or, you know, there's a Venn diagram there. There's a place where astrology, psychology, and religion all overlap for your highest good. And so that's what I do. And one of the things I love about it is it's so imaginal. It's so visual. Even if you're not looking at the pictures, you can listen to the stories and the words, and you can get pictures in your head. The glyph or the constellation of Gemini is very obvious compared to other ones. And it literally looks like two people holding hands. Now, granted, they're laying on their side, which is, you know, I would have never figured that out like thousands of years ago, but somebody did, and thank God for that. But it's more obvious than most, and it's the twins, and they're not just there in the sky, they are connected by their hands. And so what that tells us is Gemini needs connection. They are not Aries. Aries is the lone wolf. Even Leo needs people, but Leo needs to be in charge of people, you know? Yeah. Leo is the king. Leo's here to rule. As long as we get that, everybody's good, you know? But the Gemini piece, it's like, you know, hand in hand, walking side by side, you know, that constant contact, that constant accompaniment. And so for anyone who had the vanished twin, that sense of separation without conscious, you know, that separation is going to give you a much more painful sense of separation, even when you're not separated from people, unless you're conscious about it. And, you know, Geminis, because of that, can struggle more than most people understanding how other people perceive them. We all struggle with that gap in the spark plug, like between how we see ourselves and other people see us. But Gemini, if they're out of their power, if they're unactualized, if they're having a bad day, they're just going to look needy and like grasping, groping for attention, just to not be alone. And so that's also frequently one of the things we find, is that when you're working with someone with, or if you're around someone with unresolved Gemini issues, you know, a lot of the boundary stuff is like, oh, boundary schmoundry, I just don't want to have to be alone. And yeah, jump, baby, go right in.
Well, I just want to add in one little point here that ties in with that sensitivity I was talking about, that people born without those healthy boundaries, those people are especially sensitive to what other people think of them.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, later when we get into talking about which emotions are related to which body parts and all of that, which I think we should definitely give people.
Yes, help me keep track of time on that. Yeah.
What we will find is under the spleen and pancreas meridian, the very first emotion is being oversympathetic. And what is oversympathetic?
Right.
You got no boundaries around other people's emotions. Yeah. And so when people have an opinion about you, or you are perceiving that people have an opinion about you, it's excruciating, and it can be very triggering for people. That's what I wanted to tie that in with what you just said.
Yeah, awesome. It's perfect. So, and then that leads me to the next little piece about the constellation and the myth. The constellation is the twins. In the Greek part of it, they were named Castor and Pollux, and they were twins who were warriors. They followed Jason. They were Argonauts, and they were traveling around looking for the golden fleece, which was they were looking for power. And so on some level, Geminis are often very male. Even if they're a woman, they're very strong. And when they're out of power, they don't get it. It's like, oh no, I have to just hang on because I'm not strong enough to be alone. And so one of the most rewarding things we've been able to do is like when people can resolve those unresolved causes of their sense of loneliness, isolation, alienation, then they're freed up and can access their inner strength, their inner warrior, so that they are less needy and can face whatever it is they need to face in any given time.
Can I add in another little comment right here? Because it's just too juicy.
The myth is so powerful in this one. Yeah.
This is great. You promised me this was going to be powerful.
I know.
Well, one of the things that happens when people experience something very powerful and very threatening in their past, they come to a conclusion.
Right.
And inside of themselves. Like, let's say you're a child and your parents keep saying, oh, I'm going to be there at your baseball game, or I'm going to come to your play, or we'll be there for that. And then they never show up. So it happens over and over again. And finally, it's so painful and so deeply hurtful that the child comes to the conclusion, oh, people make promises, but don't keep them.
Yeah.
Right. So this is now a belief. So the point I wanted to get to here is you are now carrying what we call a limiting or mistaken belief in your nervous system. And what that means is as you go through life, every time that someone makes a promise and doesn't keep it, it reinforces that belief.
Right.
But there are probably hundreds and thousands of times where people did make a promise and keep it, but you can't take that in.
Right.
It's like you almost can't experience it because you keep gathering evidence to justify this belief that came on at a time in your life when it was extremely painful and you needed to find a way to explain it. So to the Gemini and to feeling so alone, if they are carrying some kind of a mistaken negative belief about truly being alone, right?
Yeah.
Then they will have all these experiences of really being connected, but they won't be able to experience it or see it. So that's one of the ways that identifying this kind of a thing and then clearing it from your nervous system. Like a lot of times after I clear a negative belief with someone, I say, okay, your homework is how many people you're really deeply connected with. Your homework is to notice how many people made a promise and kept it, because that limiting belief has been preventing you from seeing what's right in front of you. So that's another deep healing potential for the Gemini who feels so alone, so disconnected, and believes they're alone.
Oh, yeah.
Root of that. And now they can see, oh, actually, there's all sorts of people that are loving me, connected to me, here for me.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said what you said the way you said it, because for the people I do long-term work with, when they start hitting these junctures, I make them get a binder. I like a big one, like 3 inches, 3 rings, and then about 20 divider tabs with pockets, so you can keep track of stuff. And like you put all your readings in one of them, you put all your astrology charts in one of them, you put all your spirit guides in one of them, you have your journal in another. And then one of the sections is like gratitude lists. What's good? What's right? What's working? Who loves me? When did things work out? What are all the things that went right today? Because the training, once you get those blocks cleared, the training is a process, and the more time and energy you put into it, the faster you get better, the faster you start to see results, and especially the magic of it. And Gemini rules magic, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I really believe in Carl Jung's philosophy around synchronicity and healing, and synchronicity and spirituality. In his mind, synchronicity is the keys to the kingdom in a lot of ways. But for me, synchronicity, the piece of it that I resonate with the most and that I share about the most with clients, is that synchronicity is how whoever you believe God to be, whoever you believe the organizing forces of the universe are, and your spirit army, your spirit tribe, your spirit guides communicate with you. And where there's ease, where there's flow, where there's like a butterfly that just happens to be going by the window when you look out. This is one of the most often overlooked sources of anchoring power, and the more you're just listening and open to synchronicity with a grateful heart, then the less thinking you have to do, the less work you have to do, because you're just listening. You're listening to your world. And so as you get clearer, you practice, and then you develop those skills, and things just get easier and easier and easier. Granted, you have to put the time in.
Yeah. Maybe just looking at all the wonderful notes you sent me about all these different aspects of Gemini, and you said there's a disconnect between heart and head. And just now you were saying, oh, they'll have to think less.
Connect that. Yeah.
And so what came to me when you sent me those notes was, oh, somebody who's more in their head, more thinking than feeling, are not able to connect those two. What occurred to me is, in my experience, that sometimes when people have had a lot of trauma in their childhood around feelings, like having parents that said, you don't feel that way. Like every time the child
that awful languaging.
I believe this, and they've got adults going, no, you don't. That's not true. You don't think that. You don't say that.
The gaslighting.
And that's one thing that happens that leads people to end up in their head, because the head is a safer place to be than, right?
Yeah.
And also, if they grew up in a really emotionally violent home where emotions were terrifying, then the head becomes a safer place to be. And so you would ask me about head and heart connecting, and I thought, well, if you're in your head more and it's always thinking rather than feeling, then it's not safe and okay to feel. And those are two of the reasons, in my experience with working with people, is that they've had their emotions completely discounted and argued with from the time they were very young. So they no longer trust that what they feel is true, or they have this horrible experience of people expressing emotions in such a powerful, negative, and dangerous way that they retreat into mind rather than heart. So those are.
And that's going to be particularly difficult with the air signs, people with a lot of the sign of air, the element of air. The air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius.
Okay.
And so a life lesson of any of the air signs, but especially Gemini, is going to be bridging that gap between your head and your heart. And also Gemini, because of that, rules bridges, because of that and some of its other, mythological roles. But another piece to that, if you were a very sensitive, intuitive child, and I see this a lot in working with psychic children whose parents aren't on board or don't understand the soul they brought in, or adults who, through the healing process later, realized that they were intuitive from a very young age, but the way they were shut down around that put them up in their heads. It can be a very powerful actualizing piece of work when those things start happening. When that bridge gets built, those wounds get diminished, so that you have that integration. And that's one of the things that contributes to being a healthy empath and being able to use whatever your own insights and psychic abilities are with greater confidence and peace and less mental struggle. Because that's the hardest part with intuitives or your own intuition, whether or not you're a working psychic. There's this huge misconception about getting information. Getting the information is never the hard part. The hard part is being present with it,
Right.
understanding what you are and are not to do about it, and then having the discipline and the focus and the groundedness to do whatever it is they want you to do or not do. And it's it is the biggest part of any kind of ongoing training I do with intuitives, where it's just, or even just people who are like, I want to use my intuition better. And that becomes another journaling exercise. It's like, when did I follow it? What happened? Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's so funny. I every now and then I, get together with old friends from home, and just some of their kids who I've known since they were really little. Sometimes they'll say to me, "Okay, what do you want me to know? Tell me, what's the lesson you want me to know?" Because they see me as kind of
an intuitive yourself. Well, you are.
Right.
Yeah.
And the first thing I always say is trust your gut.
Yeah.
Trust your intuition. Like
Yeah.
whatever your initial gut response is, trust that. That's a level of truth that nobody can know but you.
Yeah.
It's pure you.
Oh,
I get it.
yeah. Yeah. And this is another thing I want to just finish with around, at least for now, the mental piece for air signs, and especially for Geminis. People with a lot of air often have learning disabilities, ADD, dyslexia, that kind of thing. And there's a very strong connection between those things that are considered to be a disability and your intuition. And so, and then, air signs tend to be a lot smarter than the average bear. But if you've got this emotional disconnect, and or you've got a strong intuition that hasn't been supportive, you're going to get branded as dumb or lesser, you're going to be in the remedial classes, and I can say that from personal experience because it happened to me. I was told all my life that I wasn't the smart one, and later I found out it's like, oh, I've got a Mensa IQ. I just have like processing issues. I'm dyslexic. I reverse numbers and letters, or even in my speech. Like at the first talk we gave, I'm like, she's a Leo with the Virgo rising. And it's like, no, honey, I'm a Virgo with the Leo rising. It's like, that's how it manifests. And so if you're the Gemini and you're struggling with this, it's like, I know I'm not stupid, but I'm having trouble. Or I'm being branded, that's a place to look. And that's where emotional clearing, again, can get the baggage out of the way so that you can better trust your perception, and build a stronger connection between your head and your heart there. Or if you're the parent of a child that's struggling, call us, because there's a lot of tools we have in our respective tool bags that can help, especially around special education stuff. And, especially in public schools, kids are just not getting the help that they need. And there's a lot of things we can bring to the table.
There's also, I think this, tell me if this is a decent segue. You had sent me in the notes something about that each sign rules a certain age.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
And you said that Gemini rules age 4 to 6, right? Yeah. And so when I read that section, I went, 4 to 6 is so interesting, because in my experience with emotional clearing, we're always going back to what age did this original trauma take place so that we can find it and clear it. We're always looking to see when things happened, and whether if it happened in utero, like vanished twin. Okay, that's that used to be the earliest thing we thought that we could ever find. Of course, now we're looking at ancestral patterns, cultural patterns, family patterns, etc., or things from old soul experiences. But so in utero was as far back as we went, but then we would test to see, did this original trauma take place between the ages of 0 to 5, birth to age 5, and 5 to 10, and we would narrow it down. So what's interesting about 4 to 6 is that when you're at closer to 4, like 4 and 5, a child is still a little too young to really be self-aware and to understand a lot of what's going on. Once you get to age 6, 7, and 8, that's when a child developmentally starts to become self-aware. So this 4 to 6 Gemini
Right.
is really interesting because things that happen to a Gemini, with 3, 4, and 5, let's say, if they are holding on to that trauma, it goes in a very deep survival primitive way because they don't have the ability to
Yeah,
understand.
yeah,
But
yeah,
so once you get to age 6 and beyond, something that happens to the Gemini and it goes into their energy field, it gets locked in. They are self-aware, so they could almost be carrying it like a belief system. Now, in terms of helping the Gemini heal things between the age of 4 and 6, anything around age 6, I could practically guide someone just by talking to them to find out what they're carrying from age 6, like in terms of like
yeah,
a limiting belief. And they could find it and maybe even clear it on their own because of their self-awareness. But when
right.
something gets locked into the nervous system without the self-awareness, it sits there in a primitive survival kind of way. And
Yeah,
usually those kind of memories, you need someone to help you find them because they're
right.
so deep and so
Yeah,
unconscious and so threatening and painful and survival based. It's harder to find that on your own. So I
good.
wanted to distinguish that. When you sent me that note, 4 to 6, I thought, oh, that's an interesting age because it really crosses a couple of important developmental ages.
Yeah, and this is where the other thing, and we've kind of alluded to this in a number of our other talks, and it's led to kind of, and then the stuff that was going on before the talks that led to these talks happening. Um, the bane of my existence right now as someone in the healing and the helping professions is that as Americans, we are in such a deep, profound, prolific mental health crisis.
Yes.
And it's granted, this has been going on for a long time. Our public policy has never prioritized the things that contribute to creating and maintaining mental health, from maternal care to public school educational programs, making sure people don't fall through the cracks, making sure people graduate, then have educational opportunities. Like, we just don't do that. And now we're reaping the rewards of what we've sown, and all we can do is try and fix it. And one of the things that's so problematic right now is our communication. We talk at each other, not to each other. And then that gets back to that whole kindergartner kind of communication dynamic. Like, we're talking at each other, or just talking to fill space. Hey, look at me. I have a million questions. It's the way we are communicating is not helping. And the sign of Gemini is all about communicating. And on a bad day, your unactualized Gemini, your unhealed, your Gemini carrying a load of baggage is going to look like a kindergartner with no impulse control and no self-awareness, no situational awareness, and just can't shut up. On a good day, there's going to be what I've come to call intellectual curiosity, where you can stop and listen at vital junctures, and you can not respond all about you, and your response when there's a break in the conversation can reflect intellectual curiosity about the person or the issue, or why the person thinks that way about the issue. We all are being called upon, especially right now when there's so much energy in Gemini, which we're really being called upon to remember or learn, take it to the next level, wherever you are in the process, how to be a better listener and a more sophisticated communicator. And that's, again, where blocked emotion can really get in your way, especially if you struggle with neediness or loneliness. You might not even be aware of how you're showing up in conversation.
Exactly. And so much of what you said, people talking at each other. The other piece that I see is that people are so quickly now having such knee-jerk responses to finding out some piece of information about someone. Oh, you support that politician, I support this politician. It's almost like it's game over.
Right.
And, I had a conversation with some friends last year, and I said, well, but you have all these other things in common with that person. Like,
right. Good.
I said, you have big, deep spiritual things in common with this person. And you just found out they vote differently than you, and you're completely cutting them off. And
without asking why.
Where is that going to get us? If you can't build on the things, and the things that are really important, like I would say on a grand scale, this person would probably be able to say, I recognize that these deep spiritual pieces over here actually are more important in the grand scale of life than this political system we have. But why not look at the power of what that is, and the power of having these profound things in common with each other, and put the political piece down here and open up a conversation and keep building on what you share and what you have in common. And from there, you can start to see that how people are choosing politically is different, as you can imagine, for each person. It's not the same for any two people. It's just not. We're all so complex. And the ability to just, as you say, communicate and listen to be able to listen without formulating an answer as you're listening, to really listen openly, to really take it in, and not already have your answer or your argument, more like it, right, ready. And that's, I don't know, Beth, where do we get back to that? Do we ever have that skill?
Well, and I think there's a lot of it, and this is where I think it's going to be a fun segue into the magician part of Gemini. Gemini rules magicians and alchemists, who were the first healers, the sorcerers, the wizards, and especially alchemy. In ancient times, there was a belief, actually up until about 200 years ago, there was a belief that you could turn base metals like lead or silver into gold. And they worked real hard trying to figure that out, and nobody did. But it became a really profound metaphor for healing. We all have baser metal. We all have baser instincts. And the people around us all have baser metal, baser instincts. The world we live in, honest to God, all my groovy hippie friends want to make it all about humans. But in my sycamore tree, right outside that window, the hawks eat the crow babies and the crows eat the hawk babies. It devastates me every spring. And yet this is Earth. And so there's three pieces to this alchemy. There's three pieces to where I think we all have a personal responsibility to become a better magician. And that's in converting our own issues, our own dark wounds, into the grace and our superpowers, that help us serve our role in the community. And then reflecting that back, being able to be the wizard, or at least the wizard facilitatrix for the people in our community in the weirder moments. And then being able to turn the baser, the darker, the more awful and difficult things about the world we live in into something more pleasant. Right. Now, there was an old hymn that I, in the church I grew up with, where it's like, let there be peace on earth, but let it begin with me. And I think that's where a lot of people, again, who get really stuck up in their heads or get really over empathetic, miss the boat. You get points for having good intentions, but if you're more upset with the baby seals, and your refrigerator's been broken for 3 weeks and you don't have the courage to really get it handled with your landlord, there's a problem here, and so it's really profound. It's really important to stay focused on your own issues, make your issues your healing priority, and so that you can have that alchemy, become that wizard, to become more proficient at turning your darker material into your light, the shining star at the core of your soul. And then that's what you express. That's what you share with your community and the greater world.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yay. So we're rocking right along. The first thing I want to do is just something I probably should have done a few minutes ago, which is just like tell our viewers, if you have questions, please send them to on the chat box to the moderator, and she'll get them to us. And we're happy to talk about whatever you want to talk about. In the interim, I'm going to segue now to the gory details. Each sign rules aspects of your physical body.
Yes.
Each sign rules aspects of your psyche and your soul, your emotional and psychological well-being or healing priorities. And so the primary drive of Gemini is reaching out. And so the body parts that do that first are your eyes, your hands, your fingers, your arms, the things you use to reach out. And so if you have a lot of Gemini in your chart, or especially if it's negatively aspected, if it's afflicted, then you will be well served to make sure you stay on top of those issues. You know, like make sure, like if you're a Gemini, make sure you get your eye exam every year and get your prescriptions up to date, you know, so that you don't do more damage.
Right.
And that sort of things. Gemini also rules your lungs, especially the upper lobes of your lungs and your ribs. And this is where it all gets so magical for me. In acupuncture, in Eastern medicine, the lungs rule sorrow. And so again, there's this correlation between the deep sorrow that Geminis carry and ailments they may have on the physical plane. And so, you know, if you're a Gemini, you know, you might not want to be a smoker, you know, you might want to like make sure you stay on top of your x-rays and now with COVID, you know, make sure you're taking care of yourself.
Right.
You know, wear your mask, you know, just wear your mask. You don't want this bug, or you want to put it off as far as you can. It also rules your thymus gland, which is the regulator of your immune system, which is kind of a way of, again, it's kind of a boundary between yourself and the rest of the world.
Exactly.
And it also carries, like, the thing I always am just blown away by is, like, if you have an autoimmune disorder, technically that means part of you doesn't like you. Part of you doesn't like you so much, it's trying to kill you. And so getting at the hating of yourself, which again is so common for surviving twins,
right?
Because there's a part of you that's always kicking yourself. It's like, why did I stay? I could have gone with them, you know, why did I stay? And self-doubt, you know, right. And so, and then that leads to, you know, the nervous system as a whole. You know, air signs and especially Gemini are going to struggle with anxiety, you know, always second guessing, especially with their intuition, especially if they have baggage around their intellectual capacities, if they were gaslighted. And so, again, that's where I've seen Sobal's work be extraordinarily powerful, especially with people who were not getting the results they wanted from their traditional doctors. You know, being an alternative doctor and then also having these emotional this toolkit to help you deal with the emotional aspect of whatever your ailment is a absolutely magical thing.
Well, this might be a perfect segue for me to talk about that connection between, you know, stored emotional trauma and physical ailments.
Right.
So, what's so fascinating is, I mean, just in my observation, in my practice, because I was so lucky to come out of school and get trained right away in emotional
when you did, yeah,
I was doing chiropractic adjustments, nutritional work like functional medicine, and emotional clearing on almost every patient. So it was really all about, like, somebody might come in with neck pain, but that neck pain, this is a classic story. Oh, when did it come on? Oh, it came on suddenly. I was just hiking with a friend and all of a sudden I got this excruciating neck pain. I said, really? What were you talking about? And it turned out they were talking about, her friend was saying, oh, I'm getting ready to file for divorce from my husband. And the woman, when she heard it, her neck went out. Now, we were able to use muscle testing to find out, why was it, hearing your friend talking about divorce, what did that trigger? And of course, it went back to something from her childhood. This was years ago. I can't remember the detail of it.
Right.
But I could have just adjusted her neck and
Right.
had her walk out the door without neck pain. But I would have missed the opportunity to get to a root emotional trigger that was stored in her nervous system that anywhere down the line could get triggered again and cause a
Yeah.
physical ailment. So that was really a big lesson for me, right? Number one, physical, physical ailments can have this deep emotional connection. But I started noticing that, wow, here's a woman that I'm working with. And when we do emotional clearing, it's always anger, resentment, frustration, depression. Well, those are liver gallbladder emotions in Chinese medicine. And I would also notice that those women, very many of them, had gallbladder issues, real
Yeah.
physical gallbladder
Yeah.
issues, real physical liver issues that were affecting their hormones and their ability to detoxify. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I have people with a lot of gut issues, like chronic bowel issues,
Yeah.
bowel syndrome, leaky gut, on and on and
Yeah.
on. And they had typical gut emotions as it relates to acupuncture,
Right.
Chinese medicine. So what's fascinating is now we understand, the statistics say that at least 70% and maybe as much as 80% of all doctors' visits are related to stress and emotional pain.
Yeah.
That's science now coming
Yeah.
in.
And
We'll go ahead and put numbers and proof to what you've
yeah.
already done for 30 years. Happy to do it. I'm happy to quote the statistic. So we are now recognizing that our emotional pain and our stored emotional trauma is at the root of almost all of our physical issues. So what can happen is, depending on you as an individual, you could have a spinal issue that's connected to your kidney emotions. You could have a spinal issue that's connected to your liver emotions. It's not the same for everyone because everybody is so different in terms of how they hold emotions. So I thought it might be helpful to give people like a general sense of which emotions go with which Chinese medicine meridian, which is how the body stores them. And
Yeah.
when I say these emotions, just listen and see, oh, do I resonate with this group of emotions? Do these feel like this is where I'm really stuck? Because people used to come into my office and they'd see the big chart of emotions and they'd go over to it and they'd point to a group of emotions and say, oh, that's me, or oh,
me.
that's my husband. Can you fix him? Because they related. So let's start with classic lung, because lung and large intestine, you said Gemini tends to have lung issues, upper lobe of the lung. So the lung and large intestine emotions are grief, sadness, profound yearning, defensiveness, anguish, compulsions to deep compulsions. I mean, grief, sadness, anguish. I mean, it's painful emotions. Defensiveness is a big one. Yearning, I find that one all the time. So if you hear that group of emotions and you relate to it, then you may have those lung and large intestine meridian issues. Liver and gallbladder, classic. Anger, resentment, frustration, depression, emotional repression, which means keeping all your emotions in, feeling galled and feeling stubborn. Those are classic liver and gallbladder emotions. And I'll name a third one because this one covers the full spine. And when you look at Gemini, you see these, what did you say? Shoulders, hands, wrists, everything reaching out. A lot of that is classic kidney meridian emotions.
Oh, interesting.
Kidney meridians, fear, dread, paralyzed will, impending doom, feeling timid, feeling miffed, bad memories. All of those are kidney and bladder meridian emotions. Now, this doesn't mean, oh, if I have these emotions, I'm going to have a sick kidney. It means this is where it's stored in your body, through the nervous system and through the meridian system, and how that manifests in your organs is as unique as you are. So if you heard me name a group of emotions and you went, oh God, those really feel like mine, then that's where a lot of your clearing will come from those meridians and those emotions.
That's so huge. I'm so glad we took the time to do that, because one of the things that I had just learned right before COVID, a little while before COVID, was just the degree to which most human adults can't take a minute and take a breath and answer the question, how do you feel? You know, they'll tell you the same story a different way using different words, but most human adults don't know how to say, I feel angry right now, or that made me angry, or I am sad, or that made me sad, or this is the exact moment I realized how sad that event from 17 years ago made me. Part of the mental health crisis is we didn't do the best job of educating our generation and the one after it about that piece and how important that is. And so, for any of us who are doing any kind of healing, learning how to do that, learning how to be more proficient at that in any given moment is a huge priority. And for people who aren't so good at it, or have moments where they're not so good at it on a recurring area, this is where the kinesiology, the neuro-emotional technique, the emotional clearing that you do is so powerful, because it can jump the brain. It can jump the consciousness and get at what's in your body. Your body knows a whole bunch of stuff you don't. And one of the things I love about this method and so many like them is that it can so shorten the process.
Right.
I first started therapy at 18, and there weren't these kinds of things. You just sat there and talked until you went broke or couldn't take it anymore.
Right.
And it often didn't clear the trauma. It just made you more aware of it. And
exactly.
what I love about this is that for those of us who are stuck or get stuck and can't get at it, this method will help you get to it, understand it, clear it in record time. And that's why it's such a favorite of peak performers, whether they're athletes or business scions or just like tiger moms, you know, who people who have ambition and are driven to succeed, and or are just sick and tired of being sick and tired. This is a really profound, quick, inexpensive way to go.
Right. And I think, a lot of people, have said that to me over the years. My God, I've been in therapy for 20 years. And in 5 minutes, we got to the root and cleared something that, I've been dealing with for 20 years. And it doesn't mean that the therapy wasn't good therapy.
No.
Because therapy, I said, okay, so you've had your 20 years of therapy. You're super aware of what's going on. And you probably cleared up a lot of things in your life that you had access to consciously. But what I'm getting to are the things that are so deeply held in the unconscious that talk therapy can't get to it. So consider your therapy years of watering and fertilizing and
investment
in your tree. And we came along with this emotional clearing. We put our hand on the piece of fruit and it came right off because you had prepared everything and you were ready for it. And I think
you were ready
when people are ready, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that's the beauty of therapy. Therapy can get you to where it can get you, but if it's really locked in a deep survival mode, you need something else to help you get to it.
Especially if it is trauma, if it is, and if it is complex, a variety of different kinds of traumas sustained over years and years and years and years, then you want something that's going to enable and empower you to see results quicker. And it's not just results in terms of your consciousness. It's results in terms of your way of being, how you're walking through your day. Are people looking at you different? Are they talking to you different? Are you manifesting new and better opportunities, more money, better health, however it is you measure? But you want to be sure that you are getting tangible results that other people notice, because that's how you know you're doing it.
Like, darling, you look marvelous.
Marvelous.
Marvelous. Now, we are right at the end. So, Beth, I want you
to go.
Let people know how to reach out to you, what you're offering.
Okay. My phone number is 805-708-2935. My website is bethmcdonaldconsulting.com. Don't forget the consulting, because bethmcdonald.com is a woman who writes vampire novels, and you will not get me through that. And so that's the best way to reach me.
Beautiful, Beth. And
I have some astrological guidebooks that can also short circuit the process on how to better navigate Mercury retrogrades, Venus retrogrades, Mars retrogrades, which is coming up. The next Mercury is in the fall, and the next Mars is at Christmas time. And so I have a beginning and advanced. And so check it out, because it can help expedite your process.
Beautiful. Is that why Elon Musk is going to Mercury, because he wants to Mars, because he wants to avoid Mercury retrograde?
I wouldn't presume to understand him, and I would love to see that man's chart, because
me too. It will be fascinating.
That'll be a lunchtime. That'll be lunch. Our next lunch. Yeah, we're doing that over lunch. Yeah.
All right, honey. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I learned so much about Gemini. I'm really excited. I am Dr. Sobel Bunis of the Emotional Clearinghouse. You can find me at my website, emotionalclearinghouse.com, all one word. And I offer 3 different levels of care and service. Number 1, some people love to have private sessions. I'm available for private sessions. And some of you want to do emotional clearing without having to do a private session. You want to do it on your own. And I have 2 options. Number 1, if you're the kind of person who can set aside 3 one-hour blocks in the course of a week, I have these wonderful programs you can do on your own. And it takes 3 one-hour sessions over the course of a week. They're very deep. They're very rich. They cover a wide range of emotional clearing. And then for those of you who want to spend less time and maybe have a less expensive, more accessible program, I have a membership. And that membership will bring you every month a simple 1/2 hour emotional clearing on a brand new topic each month. And it's the kind of thing you can come back to and redo and do different levels of healing. And it's the kind of thing you'll always, as a member, have access to the archives. So that's what I've got to offer. You've heard what Beth has to offer. It's been such a pleasure. I think we could go on forever about Gemini, but we covered a lot. I'm really
have to stop now. Yeah.
We did today. Thank you so much,
Thank
Beth.
you.
Yeah, and thank all of you for being here. So
yes.
Bye for now. We'll see you next time at the next episode of Astrology as a Healing Guide. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.